giza, sioni mwanga mahali popote. Yesu nimefinywa sana. Oh, nataka hii sasa na hofu ile haiji kesho. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, 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 uvumilivu. Niweze kukungoja siku zangu zote. Hata giza kiwe siku 40. Baba, Yesu nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Yesu nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Uchungu wa moyo ulinifanya nione umbali nami. Ukweli ni kuwa uliposema hutaniacha kamwe, hivyo tu ndivyo unavyotenda. Na hulali pia waniwaza. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Siku zangu zote nikungoje. Uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, 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 nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, ninakungoja, ninakungoja. Nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, nitakungoja, nitakungoja. Baba, nitakungoja, oh Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, nitakungoja, nitakungoja. Nitakungoja, nitakungoja, nitakungoja.
Good morning, people. Karibuni sana to yet another session hosted by iLife, our young adults ministry here at Mamlaka Hill Chapel, Ruaka. So before we start, allow me to pray so that we can be led by the Lord. Let us pray. Father, we thank you so much for this gift of allowing us to be here today. We ask that you would go before us, that you would grant us insight and wisdom that comes from above. That those who are on the other side just listening in and just sending their comments, Lord, I pray that you may be with them and that you may open their hearts even as we do so today. We thank you and we glorify your name. Karibu again. My name is Pastor Charity Gatimo. It is a joy to be with you today. And before we go so much further, I'd like to introduce you to an amazing, great people, panelists today. So I'll just start with the one exactly opposite me. So karibuni sana. Just say who you are and what you do.
All right.
Yes.
Good morning to everyone, our panelists and all that are watching. My name is Peter Kamau. I'm an engineer by training, a mechanical engineer. I work in the risk industry, working as a consultant for the insurance companies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Olive Njoroge, and I work in the payments industry, now showing digital and all that. So I'm in financial and technology services, and it's great to be here, and it will be great to hear from you. Asanteni.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Joroge. I am an economist, but have been working in the banking industry for the last, say, 20 years, so that I'm labeled a banker. Let's have a good session together, and good morning again.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Adhiambo. I am a counseling psychologist by profession, and I'm really happy to be here. I can't wait for the conversation. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Sami Mate. I have about 20 years work experience, but I also call myself a psychologist, which basically means I like riding or I like cycling. But I'm a trained physicist, but I work in the IT industry for now. Yeah.
Karibuni sana. It is a joy to have you today. So I am Charity Wamboy, as I said earlier, and I'm a pastor here. And career is such a big name within the just general life cycle, or when you are growing up, going to school, then ultimately getting a job. And there are so many myths behind career. And I'd like us to demystify career, what it has been for you, even as you share just like a minute or two of how your journey of your career has been. So I'll start with Sami as we just go. Yes.
It's an interesting question because I sometimes ask myself, so what's my career? Like I said, I'm a trained physicist. I studied physics as my undergraduate studies. Then I went into aeronautic engineering. I was an aircraft mechanic for about a year or two before I went into IT. So I've been in IT for about 20 years now. So I'm also sure I'm going to be in IT for much longer because everything has become almost technologically related. And so sometimes I ask myself, what is it that I'm doing? And so that question is a very interesting question for me to answer. But for the bulk of my career, if I was to use that word, I've been primarily helping customers make better sense of how to use technology and how to align appropriate technology to their business strategy, and lately how to alleviate pain, especially if you look at it from extreme poverty, and how to use appropriate technology to help people get out of extreme poverty, which is what I'm basically doing right now. Worked for interesting people. I know the word Bill Gates evokes some interesting thoughts now. Spent some time working for him a few years ago. I've worked in the aviation industry also, which is part of my passion also in terms of flying. But yeah, I'm currently helping small-scale farmers now use technology to improve the way they do their farming so that they can get better produce. That's really what I do now.
You have quite some experience in the IT industry.
Fortunately, coming after Sami. In campus I did a BCom, majored in accounting, worked for a startup, practiced my accountancy for almost 3 years, 2.5. But then immediately I finished campus, I immediately started to transition into counseling psychology. Yeah, so did a little bit of accounting. So I'm an accountant, who was in the finance space was to go into finance. I did everything, all those things, CPAs, the degree, and then I transitioned into being a counseling psychologist. Yes. So for me, the word career, when I think of career, I think of risk. I feel like for my life, I have taken a serious transition and a serious risk at a very young age, which during this period is normally the hardest point to take that risk in itself, because you have, after you finish school as an African, you have black tax, you have, okay, first of all, getting the job is harder. Then when you get the job, there's so much you need to do with this small job of yours. And so most of the young people ideally delay the transition until a later point. So for me, when I think of the word career, for myself, I think, most probably the biggest risk I've ever taken in life so far. Apart from breathing.
Different worlds apart.
That is just a serious, it's just like a loop.
Turnover,
Yes, yeah.
Amazing.
But yeah.
Thanks for that story. John?
So for me, it's been a journey. Let us say that when I first started working, I worked for family. When I was still in school, my mom ran a cafeteria. So I would wake up early in the morning, go to the market, buy stuff for the cafeteria, and start working. And then when I finished school, I went to campus. I did economics. Then I found myself in the finance world. I worked for a financial organization that collapsed, went back into family business. I went into the beauty and hair industry. I actually set up a college for beauty and hair. Then went back to banking, and that's where I am now, last 20 years. And so for the young people, what I would encourage them is this. Don't be focused to that one career, because you will find yourself at very different stages in life, and where you start or where you first begin is not where you end. So where God places you that time is where your career starts. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. I know. This is wengine ndio tunaanza.
So where do we go from there? So I started like him. I worked for my dad business in the music industry, diverse, selling guitars, music, electronics, such like things. And in my world, people defined, so what I want to say is nothing defines you. So in my world, I was told I was good in maths. That's what they said. And so my mind told me, because you're good in maths in my world, the common routes you took is either you become an accountant, other people became lawyers or doctors or teachers. That was the option available. So of course I took the accountant route, like Lynn. And that's what I thought. And I thought being an accountant is a back office person, no interaction, just sit at your laptop and just crunch numbers, give people figures. That's what I did for a while. Then over time, I found myself, because I was very good at details, pushed into operations. Then I joined banking. So I moved from that small shop to banking. And then I was moved into sales. That was new, because it's no longer back office. Now it's front office. You need to talk to people. You need to sit in the front and say what you're doing and sell. And then transitioned to strategy, which is what I do now. So my main focus is to listen to you, what you want to do, and see how I can make it come to happen. And that's what I enjoy. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Wow. All right. You know, when I was young,
When you were young?
Still are
Yeah,
young.
you are young, come wow.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm still young. Thanks God. Now, when I was a young boy, I dreamt of becoming a pilot, as everyone thinks of, you know. And I pushed to that dream until I went to high school and I met these guys, wananiuliza, unataka kukua nini? Then I'm like, I want to become a pilot. Wananiambia, even as when you were coming to this school, that was what all you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Now I'm just asking God hata kama nitakuwa driver, you know, ni sawa. That is where I am. But I thank God that even in such an environment, I was able to go to campus. I pursued engineering. So then from there, for 5 years, from there you get out into the market. You know, you're looking forward to be, you know, an engineer. You've studied for 5 years. So you get out here, you expect that now that you're an engineer, the first employer ataku acknowledge you as an engineer, and even the check that they'll give you is quite something. Yeah, you know, umekuwa shule for 5 years. But that was not the case. So you go, you start, nakwambia, actually you're a good engineer, but I can start you with 20,000, you know. It happens, by the way. It happens. So that's how I started. Then I got into insurance, and I realized that insurance, they need engineers. So I went into the insurance industry, did a few certifications, so that I'm allowed to practice insurance, and also with my background in engineering, and that is what I do. So I've been working for the past 2 years as a consultant to the insurance companies, and now looking forward that God will give me, you know, another platform now to practice that on my own, which is something beautiful. Yeah, so that is generally my simple career journey, 2 years only, and it is fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me share my story. I when I was in university, I wanted to be a banker, and you know, I was, you know, aiming for a bank manager, you know, making decisions for the big banks. Ultimately, I did finance and joined a bank. I worked there for around a year. Then after that, I practiced accounting just for a bit. But having worked in the banking industry, well, it was an unfortunate incident. That is why, as to why I left. But I found it very monotonous, and I felt like my social life is almost non-existent. Maybe that is an excuse as to why nilitolewa huko, but
Accounting is boring, let's just be honest.
It's really boring. Yes.
it's very boring. So then in 2017, I came and joined Mamlaka, and I would never have thought I'd be working in church because I was brought up Catholic. So I came in as green as they come. Yani hakuna kitu na hata Biblia, I think unajua John 3:16. And I have found so much joy in serving other people and just growing in the kingdom of God. And career is pegged with so many myths. One of them is, like we had mentioned earlier, that if career is connected to a very big paycheck, it has to be a 6-figure. You know, the way Kama was expecting to have, you know, engineering is commensurate to the salary. But what are some of those things you've had people say? You can just start from anywhere. Olive?
Sure.
Yeah.
Great that you've chosen me first, because I had serious myths around career. The first being, I'm now going to be free. I'll have my own salary.
True.
I can do anything I want. My mom doesn't need to ask me where I'm going. Neither does my dad. I mean, now I have my own house and I'm done. Second, I was thinking about that salary. So those are things you think about when you're starting
true.
out. And the reality is a bit different. So, to be honest, my first job, and this was something, so I was living in Kiambu at that point in time. That's where we lived with my family. And my first job was asked to join as a person who helps with reconciliation. This is after working for my dad. So I was so happy. Now I'm not even working for my dad. Now I've got myself a job. I'm a graduate. So I'm being paid, they told me 200 shillings per day. If you work that out, that's like, if you really insist and work Saturday and Sunday, that's 1,400. And then 4 weeks, that's 5,600. I was so proud. I was just like, I've got a job.
Yeah.
And I was very diligent. And I couldn't pay transport from Kiambu. So my dad would give me a ride, and he would ask me, Olive, you're a graduate? Yes. You studied for how long? Yeah, that number of years. And you're earning how much? 1,400 per week. Oh, really? Oh, it was tough. But the fact about that myth, what I want to debunk on that is the beginnings are very important. It's very important that you remain diligent, learn from it, because I was picking these papers, putting things together for people within the team, and then get a report. I learned what happens on the ground. And the surprising thing in my life out of that experience is ending up being the chief accountant, the person leading that team. So no one could tell me anything. I understood the job. So you are paid back by those humble beginnings. So whatever, if you get a position where you're even volunteering, those skills, those lessons apply somewhere later in your life. And they're very useful. So for me, that was my myth, but a very good lesson over time.
Humble beginnings.
I'd say, thank you for sharing. The 600 in a month, yeah? Okay. It's like, huh? I think another myth that I have seen around is once you get your career figured out, everything else is going to be okay, right? You get your biggest fulfillment and biggest security from your career. So get that figured out, everything else will be fine. So just always strive towards just being better. Once you get that paycheck, like Kama was saying, you'll be okay. So get your fulfillment, ideally, from your career. Something that I think our parents and their generation pushed towards us. Just get that job in that bank. I think everything is going to be fine. You'll be a person. Yeah.
Yeah. When we were going through college, we had some very interesting things that people used to tell us about how to define success. And in those days, as it is now, as I can see, there was almost that equivalence of career and success. Okay, and so that for me is a myth, because the way we used to laugh, and it used to be funny in those days, that people used to say, so what is success really? And we'd come up with these 1 to 7. I don't know whether you guys have heard of this thing. You have one wife, okay? You have what is it? Two children, okay? No, it's a myth of what success is.
Okay.
Children.
Then 3. You know what 3 is?
Yeah.
3-bedroomed house.
Makes sense.
Then 4.
A car.
No, yes, a 4-wheel
4x4
drive.
car.
4-wheel drive car.
Yes, a 4-wheel.
Then 5. You guys know that was a 5-acre plot of land.
Oh.
Okay. 6.
6-figure salary.
6-figure salary. 7. I think we are trying to figure out what 7 is. So we had all these myths around what success really looks like, and a lot of us, especially for those who are not Christians, were using those measures of success to define as to whether this is the career I need to go. If it does not give me a 6-figure salary, if it does not give me a 5-acre plot of land, does not give me a 3-bedroomed house, then it's not worth doing. And so you'd find people who are naturally very gifted, say for example with numbers, doing something else because they figure that these numbers is not going to bring money on the table, or it's not glamorous, it's not going to give me this trophy wife. And so those are some of the myths that we sort of grew up with. And a little bit about my story also, growing up, I'm a little bit like Kama. I wanted to be a pilot. I think all of us wanted to be pilots at one point. And I even went to a high school that particularly studied aviation as one of its examinable subjects for KCSE for that particular reason. And after I left, I thought, now I'm really going to be a pilot. My dad looked at my results, applied for scholarships out there, even got admission to some of the very prestigious universities in the US. And my dad looked at the fee structure. I said, okay, you just stay here. So I figured I would do rocket science. So that's why I did. That's why I studied physics. But look at me now, I'm doing IT. So it's interesting. What she said was something about foundations, your beginnings. In mathematical speak or physics speak, we call it first principles. Those are very, very important. If you are studying, for example, analytical mathematics, you'll understand that you need to get to the point where you understand first principles for you to be have any measure of success in any complex study of mathematics or physics. And so for me, I think the same applies here. Your first principles are very important. Understanding from the ground up is very key. But those myths, in terms of how to define success, were what I would say characterized our confusion, especially going through college and when we were very young at that time.
Also finding identity in success, because I remember the other day Reverend Lovey said, how would you define success? And you know, naturally, if you're a person and you own a dog, so if the dog is looking after you, you haven't figured. But if you're looking after the dog, you're taking it to the vet. Ikianza ikiwa na tumbo ndio huyo umeanza kukimbia to the vet. And it has really boggled our minds completely, that thinking that we have to attain it. And at times it is okay not to get there. John.
Yeah, thank you. Another myth about career is that it is easy to choose a career. It isn't. It's not easy to choose a career. And what I can encourage people is allow due process. Because a career requires a lot. It requires your passion. What is your passion? And when you're going through education, you may not necessarily know what your passion is. However, that education will help you in whichever career you land in. Kama is a good example here. He's an engineer.
Yes.
And he would have thought that his engineering education background is what his career is going to be. But now he's working with insurance. Yes. Lynn here started with accountancy. And she did everything from CPA to whatever books she read to become an accountant. Only way later to realize, no, I think there's much more to life than accountancy. And I enjoy talking to people. And today she's a psychologist. So allow yourself the due process. And God will lead you there. But going back to what Olive has said, be passionate, be diligent. Your interest will lead you. Your passion will lead you. But your humble beginnings are very important. But today, if you sit down and you just finished school and you're really belaboring yourself wondering, what is my career? And you're feeling perplexed, it is okay. Because it's not easy to choose a career. Yes.
Wow, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Actually, I want to tie my myth about career with what John has just said. That, you know, that someone can choose a career for you. That's a myth. Or something can choose a career for you. Unajua, sometimes most people are in careers because your dad told you go and pursue this.
Yes,
Your parents told you this is good for you, you know. Wengine wetu tuliingia kampo because of our grades that we had in high school, tukapata cluster points. So you're there, you know, calculating what course you qualify, you know. That happened to most of us, yeah?
Yes.
Whether you qualify for engineering, whether you qualify for medicine and such. So your cluster points, this was could decide what career to do. And the parents or those cluster points, they cannot choose a career for you. The only person who can choose a career for you is God. Because he orchestrates every situation in your life to eventually put you in a place so that now you glorify him in one way or the other. Right now, Lynn is a psychologist. She's glorifying God through her psychology part of life, you know. That is what God intended for her from the beginning. Because what we forget that we want to be in this world to be remembered, you know.
To leave a legacy.
Yes, to leave a legacy. We forget that we are in this world looking for eternity. So everything about us is about God. Whatever we do is about God, so that we earn eternity by glorifying him eventually. So no one can choose a career for you. Cluster points cannot choose a career for you. Only God can choose a career for you.
Can I put in a question there?
Yes.
Okay. So, um, we're throwing in the word passion, we're throwing in the word patience, we're throwing in the word foundations and all those things, and they're beautiful words, yeah. And as we were talking, I was thinking we are coming from as a sort of an ideal quotation, an ideal situation. I'll throw in the R word, realistic. Let's be realistic now, yeah. So imagine there's someone who, let's say, they've just finished university. They're they've gotten this one job, and for them transitioning into a different career or even just thinking about passion is a privilege, right? Because they have so much they're doing. So I've finished school, maybe I have help, maybe I am help. So the black tax is following me. I have maybe 3 people I'm taking care of from home. My parents, they did the harambe from home for me to do well for that salo. Now, after that salo has come through, everything is going to happen. So, ideally, I don't have so I'm thinking, I don't have the privilege to even explore my passions. This is or like, for instance, what we were saying in terms of job, this is what I was given by the government, and it's actually a privilege to even end up in university. So then I'll just be a teacher, or I'll just be whatever I got and work around that, because again, Kenya, and then being in a developing world, and then the unemployment rate. So I'm just trying to think, so in our reality now, in Kenya, in a developing world, in a world where there are no jobs, so even just, I can't even think about another career. This is my job, and I have to do this job until to get that 6 step, because we're still figuring out 7. The 6-step thing, and for an African child, for a bigger percentage, there's a couple of other steps. There's family. There's just a lot of things. So then, what do we say in terms of that? Because now, when we throw in the words passion, for someone, that's not.
It's not a.
That's a privilege. Just like, why are they like? Oh yeah, you at least your privilege, you transitioned. I don't have. I can't even think of. So what happens for them in terms of career? Because now they'll unfortunately be in those 2 myths. They'll buy into that because this has worked before, and unfortunately, it has worked. There are people who have gone through these myths, and it has worked for them. So why not go for the safer one? Now, for passion to achieve, for risk to achieve, the panel is here. Yes.
I can go here. First, I will just go back to what the young ones are saying nowadays. The hustle is real. We will hustle. But again, at the back of your mind, remember, your dream is still valid. Yes. It is okay to dream as you hustle. And I like giving myself as an example. I'm from a background where my parents were not privileged. So, for those who can figure out times, I went to campus when there was boom. So we were paid by the government to be in campus. We were lucky.
Hey.
Yes.
No, but they have to repay
How
it.
I wish.
It was a loan. Hold that thought. It was a loan. It was a loan.
Where is that law? It should be gazetted.
Yes, and I can tell you, I have friends today who are in CRB because they never paid that government loan. So yes, it was a loan.
It was a loan.
It was a loan, but
Help.
It's called HELP. Higher Education Loans Board. HELP.
It's the help
Yes.
now.
Sir.
But there was a package, as much as it would pay the school fees, kulikuwa na package kako.
Yes, there was a little package that you were
okay.
given. And back to what Lynn has said, you have family. So I used part of my boom to pay school fees for my siblings. Yes? So this is real. Yeah? And so when I finished campus, and the organization that I used to work for as an intern went under, at least I had something on my CV to say, during my vacation, I worked here. And so I remember my very first interview was very interesting because I told the panel, I'm new in Nairobi, and what I'm looking for is rent. And I hear in Nairobi, rent in a simple house goes for so much. And I'm telling them. And I am looking for bus fare. And I hear bus fare goes for so much. And I'm telling them. So, and ultimately, I was looking for like 12,000 shillings as my salary. And do you know I was hired just for being passionate about it and being authentic about it. And praying about it. Because I told God, here I have a family, my siblings, I've got to pay for them school fees. I have my mom that I want to pay for rent and all these things. And God does answer prayers. We may not have all the answers. We may not know about our tomorrow. But you know, if you know to whom you belong, then you're okay and you're in safe hands. That's what I can talk about, being realistic. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you raise an interesting question because Christians are accused of not being real. You know, we have all these nice flowery words to use. Christianese in terms of this is what you ought to be doing. But I think as early as possible, I would like to probably challenge young people to ask themselves this question: what are you obeying or what are you obedient to as you grow into life? Because the 6 things that I've mentioned right here could be what you are obeying, and you could pursue them for the rest of your life. Like I said, I've worked for some very interesting people. One of them was the richest person for the longest time, and I remember once meeting him with a group of colleagues in a restaurant in Seattle, and so we are so excited because we've just joined the organization and we want to change the world like he's changing the world, you know. So we come and we introduce ourselves, or we have our name tags and so on and so forth, and we are thinking, so he'll invite us to sit down and we'll have this world-changing conversation and we'll be propelled into success. He listened to us. He didn't say anything. Then, and then so he asked, can we take a picture with you? He said no. And then he turned and continued taking his coffee. Now, we took our nice little tails, put them under our legs, and tiptoed away. Okay, later we learned that it's his philosophy not to take pictures with just anybody, even if it's a company stuff, because he doesn't know what people will do with those pictures. But for me, I think, I don't know about my other colleagues, but I started asking myself this question: what really, really is success? Because I thought success will make you this kind of person that people will love to be around, you know, and things like those. But it really hit me, and so I went back to the Word of God, and just before we started this show, we were talking about Abraham, and we were talking about how this holiday that we celebrated yesterday, for some of you guys who celebrated without knowing, is called Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha is actually the celebration of Abraham's obedience to God by sacrificing his son. Of course, we can debate as to which son it was, whether it is Ishmael or Isaac, but it's about Abraham's obedience. And so my point being is that I think I learned that in life, as a human being, you'll be obedient to some force. And so if you do not choose that force proactively, life will choose for you. And you'll find yourself chasing after each and every thing that comes. And so being obedient to that will sort of help you then as you're going through your hustle, for you then to figure out, yes, this is where God really wants him. And we also talked about Joseph. When Joseph went to Egypt, he was 20 years old. He was literally a young adult. Yes. He was just crossing over from college to life, if you're to look at it from this current circumstance. So he was young in all, by all means of imagination. And so by the time he was the prime minister of Egypt, he was 30. Did he know his purpose when he was 20, when he was taken? Most likely not. He had just built his first principles, humble beginnings, and he knew, you know, there's some things that are good, there's things that are bad. You know, as a Jew,
Brothers are not.
you know.
Don't trust your brothers.
But when the brothers came through that door asking for food, I think I would imagine his purpose became very clear. So this is why God took me through this journey. Yes. And so for me, it's a journey of obedience. That's what I'll probably say. Yeah.
Thank you. We are just about to go on break. Yes, imagine, time is really going. So, karibuni again. We're just going for a break, then we'll come back and talk about sacred vocation versus secular vocation.
Mbele yake Mwokozi wangu, je, nisimame maskini? Sina cha kumtumikia, cha kumpa sinacho. Nisimame mbele ya Mungu, sina kitu cha kumpa, bila hata na tunda moja. Je, nisimame hivyo? Siku nyingi nilizitupa, zingerudi siku zile. Ningempa Mwokozi wangu, ningemtumikia. Nisimame mbele ya Mungu, sina kitu cha kumpa, bila hata na tunda moja. Je, nisimame hivyo? Ndugu yangu, amka leo, Bwana bado akuita. Kifoni hunayo nafasi ya kumtumikia. Utasimama mbele yake, huna kitu cha kumpa, bila hata na tunda moja. Je, utakuwa hivyo? Utasimama mbele yake, huna kitu cha kumpa, bila hata na tunda moja. Je, utakuwa hivyo? zako zapendeza, nazikondea kwa shauku kubwa. Heri siku siku moja mbele zako kuliko siku elfu mbali na wewe. Bwana, nguvu na msaada wangu, takupenda daima.
Welcome back again, guys. We are actually trying to see how we can make sure that we have covered this topic in its extent. So I'd just like to do a few shout-outs just to thank you for joining us. Otherwise, we would have been looking at ourselves and our phones and our cameras. So Mary Henia, thank you for joining us. Angela Wanjiko, who's just right here. Aimoka Chris, karibu sana. William Kamunge, that's an uncle of mine. Wanjiko Chomba, karibu sana. Her Doctor says, Peter Kamau Gitao, tunakucheki.
Thanks, Steve.
Kahura Edwin is watching. Then we have one, Lockdown Okelo, who's saying, great topic, I'm watching. As for me, I lost my job in March due to the impact of COVID. Now I'm almost done with selling my household items to survive. So he's just asking for a job, and we will pray with you. We'll remember to pray with you after the session. Gakinya Joseph, karibu sana. Elijah Osuga, David Jongona, Mburu Wasike, Pastor Nyatho, how are you? Karibu. She says, it must have been a 7-day weekend, financial freedom. So some is saying it must have been a 7-day weekend, total financial freedom. Reverend Julie, Reverend Julie, karibu sana. She has finished for you the 7 steps. Yes. Elijah is saying prayer. I also remember praying to God to get my first job. I was actually sort of lamenting. You've given jobs to other people, yet why not me? And Isaiah Munyeri is just echoing what Elijah has said. Very true, man. I relate hapa wa. Charles Kafudhi karibu. Reverend Julie says, loving the conversations. Good to see my good friends, John and Olive. And Sami Mate, representing Kama Kawaida. This is the A team. That's what Reverend Julie says. Devin Jogona, enjoying the conversation. Thanks for the platform. And Kafi, Pastor Kafi, thank you so much for joining us. So,
Before you, I just wanted to speak to the person who lost the job,
Okay,
because
perfect.
might not have time to
Yes.
to talk too much about it. Just this week, I put a post on LinkedIn, just inviting anybody who has gone through a termination of employment, and offering myself to say, you know what, I could write a recommendation. I could even connect you to some of my networks, and so that's an offer that I would give out there. And so if he's on LinkedIn, let him look out for me, and I'm happy to connect him to some of my networks and just help in that way.
what's your LinkedIn? Sami Mate.
Sami Mate on
All right.
LinkedIn, yeah.
Lockdown, just remember that, just to look for Sami Mate. So we know there's this big question that we usually have in our circles, secular vocation versus sacred vocation, and how we have defined it our own ways. But it's a question that many have actually, wrestled with. So, I mean, for example, I am working for a company that, a betting company. Does that mean I'm actually not glorifying God? Does it mean then that I am actually falling short of the glory of God more that I'm working in that, that industry? So I'd like to hear what are you're just going through your career path and your journey, what secular vocation could be or not be, and versus, sacred vocation. I want to start with Sami Mate.
I was very interested to hear what Olive has to say. No, I was very interested to hear what Olive has to say. Go ahead. Mine is very short. For me, I see no distinction between the sacred and the secular. I think it just comes back to what your work ethic and your definition of really work is, because God has given us work and there is dignity of work. And if you understand what your purpose is in life, I know those sounds like sound like very Christianese words, but for me, I would probably say that I wouldn't necessarily make a very clear distinction, because there's also the part that says, you know what are there job places that are entirely Christian?
Mamlaka Hill Chapel.
You know.
Yeah. I have just answered you. Mamlaka Hill Chapel Rwaka.
How Christian is the kitchen in the Mamlaka church? You know, I don't know.
Same.
They make burnt offerings, yeah, isn't it? I mean, but there's also the question, because we're also talking, your pendulum could swing the other way. You say, okay, is it okay to work as an accountant in a brothel? You know, or work for somebody who you know very clearly is laundering money. I mean, and so I think, so the question does not become what is it that you're doing, but it for me then goes to the question, answering the question, what are you about as a person? Maybe it's about a little bit about your identity. Where do you find your identity? And then that determines the answer to some of those questions. That's how I look at it.
Wow.
Okay, so
Amazing.
then I follow. So my view, and to your point, I think it's very key in terms of what we started. It's very easy to sound spiritual, but I just want to lay it out, whether it's sacred or secular. It's very important that you have your own principles as a person. As a person, you must define that as a person. So you must agree, these things I do, these things I don't do. I'm a straight person. I will always be honest. I will not be compromised. In my time, in my life, because we work with various vendors, various people, you find yourself confronted by people who want to put the brown envelope. Are you that kind of person? Do you do brown envelope? You must first understand yourself, so that whichever position you find yourself. So I said I started as an accountant. And when you're an accountant, sometimes people want you to misrepresent.
Yeah.
Forget something.
Misrepresent what you're, and if you're in banking, it's more of like if you're with the regulator, you want to make sure you are saying what needs to be said. Yes. And for me, for a time, when I found myself in situations where I really don't, I'm not feeling this thing, and that's how I transitioned. And I'm like, that's not for me. But you must define what are your personal principles. What can I or can I not do? Before you even start defining whether it's sacred or secular. So that whichever position you find yourself in, you're representing the true you. Who you are.
So you cannot be creative in accounting. Eh?
No. Creative accounting is very prevalent, but you must choose, make a choice. Is that the thing for me? Yes, okay.
Maybe even before they continue, maybe we define what is secular and what is sacred. As we're moving in this word, maybe all of us are defining a different thing altogether, and we're assuming everyone is on board with Oxford dictionary's definition of. So to us, what is secular? What is sacred? Because I think about the question, apart from people who work for church, every other person is secular, technically. Technically. You work in a bank, you work on all those places. Your JD is not dependent on the Bible. Ideally. Your JD is come to work this point. Yeah? So what do we mean when we say sacred? And what do we mean when we say secular? So that, yes, because I'm really trying to understand what is that.
The different John.
No, it's a thin line, to be honest. It's a very, very thin line. And I'll just go back to what Mate has said and what Olive has said. There's something that God has put in us, in our conscience. Is it right? Does it honor God in whatever field? So we go back to being an accountant in a brothel. What were you thinking applying for that job as an accountant in a brothel to begin with?
A house.
You see.
It's very simple.
No, and then maybe you were not.
Four-wheel drive car.
Let's assume at that time you didn't know.
Even if you knew.
Okay, then you knew. But then, while you are at it, because you have to pay rent, and you're an accountant here, what about then we go back to the very basics and tell God, I am here today and I don't want to be here. And I'll go back to the story of Joseph. He went to the palace, and the queen wanted him to do bad things, and he refused. He didn't. And for that he paid. He went to prison. But while he was there, he still honored God. And when we go back to what Mate had said, Joseph did not know his purpose when he first began. But after enduring all those, he then eventually knew. So even as you are an accountant where you don't want to be, or if you're in a secular place where you feel, my spirit is telling me, no, this is not the place I want to be. In due course, God is going to redeem you. Because, and I keep saying, even there's another question, is it okay for sacred to mix with secular? And I remember T.D. Jakes saying, we who sometimes think we are very sacred do very mediocre things, and the secular people do things to perfection. So there's still something we can learn, even as much as we are saying there's a thin line. But again, what has God convicted you in your spirit? So while you're paying that rent, would you pray for God to remove you from that place you're feeling, I don't want to be here? Yes.
And again, to your question, I presume, and it's not Oxford, sacred means there are very many churchy people. Secular
That's the
means there are not
assumption.
many churchy people.
Yes, that's the
It's
assumption.
very not Oxford, just making an assumption. I believe, one, the Lord's purposes prevail. That's one. His purposes prevail, whichever the circumstance. Two, all things work together for good, for them that love the Lord.
Amen.
Then three, he called us so that we can care for others, we can honor him, and we can preach the gospel. Just have some guideline to yourself. You can't stay secluded that I'm just going to be in a sacred world, whilst there's a calling in your life to reach out to others. So you will be led to various circumstances, hopefully not brothel, but you'll be led to various circumstances or places or positions. The important thing is, are you staying true to your calling?
What I'm getting from you guys, you're basically saying, even in the Bible, the examples of Joseph and Daniel, sacred is the person. Sacred is not the environment,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if I am sacred,
You're doing it for the and to the glory.
but Kama has something to
Actually, you see, when I was in campus, things used to be tough, really tough, and especially doing engineering. So there's this one movie, Three Idiots, that everybody watched to
Yes.
look for inspiration, you know. And there's a phrase there by the guy who was the director of that university. Alikuwa anawaambia, life is a race. Run fast or you're trampled on. So sometimes we come out with that perception in our mind that, you know, life is a race. Unless I run fast, I'll be trampled on. So there are so many things that you want, whatever comes your way is what you want to take up so that you're not trampled on. So at least you're keeping at par and the pace, kulingana na maybe your friends and how life is demanding of you. And that, if that is the motivation inside you, it finds you in very wrong areas because you just take up what comes your way. We forget who owns us, you know, and what is his purpose for us in our lives. So our identity, where do we draw our identity from? If the examples that these people have given is Joseph, Daniel, look at the people like Nehemiah. All these people had been captured from where they had come from, Israel, and so where they worshipped God, and taken to areas where they worshipped idols and such. And they were very close to the kings. And they did those things. But there's one thing these people did not forget, where they had come from. They would cry for their people, maybe those that had been left there. So they would still think about, where have I come from? They would not worship the idols. They would not do all these things because they knew that they don't belong here. They belong to God, and their identity is in God. And I think even as we are in this world and looking forward to be at par and doing so many things, let us not forget one thing, that our identity is in Christ Jesus. And if our identity is then in Christ Jesus, we will have a purpose. We will know how to pursue life. We will know, even in our careers and what we do. Every circumstance we find ourselves in, it is God who orchestrates it, and that is where we are there. There's a reason that he has put us there. So eventually, his glory will come through. Yeah.
You know, you've brought up the issue of identity. I was just thinking how I will call them millennials, or the people within this age group, and the work ethic, and how it is not such an important aspect of who they are or where they are working. How has that, what have you learned about the work ethics? I mean, within the friends that you know, are they practicing a great work ethic? Even having found identity, has that been an issue? How can you call the people out there to have great work ethic? Lynn.
Okay, I was waiting for someone else to start first. So I like how you've spoken about identity first. For anyone who knows me, I'm really big on identity, and I keep on asking, because I experience, because there's a dignity that work gives you when you, in the morning when you wake up and you're showering and you're going somewhere, you have purpose. Then you reach a point where you have no purpose. You're sleeping, it's 7, other people are going to places, you're just there. And I really got to think a lot about identity, and I asked myself, why am I feeling bad that I don't have a job, right? Is it the money? Most probably not. But when you look at the deeper reason, it's just, I just feel like I don't have dignity. My job defined me, right? So if I don't have this job, then who am I? Tying it back to identity in Christ. Because a lot of times in our careers and all of these things, they have identified us. I am. A very simple example, when you ask someone, who are you? The first thing is, my name is Lynn Adhiambo. I am a counseling psychologist, right? Then now the question that we keep on asking, I think we'll just ask, and I said it before the first time, is, so if it goes, who are you? Tying it to what Kama is saying. So if I am not an engineer, who am I? If our company goes under, then who am I? Who are you? So that you are flexible in as you're changing the different things. Because you see the identity side to things, the people who are tied to their spouses, the people who are tied to their beauty, their face, so even, and career is normally one of the biggest identifiers, seconded by family. Yeah, so where if I don't have this, then I am not a person. But then as believers, we are reminded you are a person because of Christ, right? So just saying that. So work ethic. I have so many things to say about work ethic, but I'll say something small. I feel like for the longest time, especially our generation is being accused so much, and I'm there. And it's because, and especially with Christians, unfortunately, we basically just, some of us just have no work ethic. There's mediocrity that is tied to Christianity and even sacred setups, and we go, anyway, God is so vain. Anyway, I'm focusing on eternity as Kama. What is the earth? Let me just, and just how we are doing things and how we are, and I feel there's a lot of escapism in itself when you call out on work ethic. There's a lot of things you say, I'm growing, I am nana.
My personality.
It's my the P word. It's my personality. I'm not as this. So work ethic, I feel it's a big thing, and especially for us who are young, it keeps on coming up, where you're working with someone, but the fact that we are in a space where people are comfortable with average, right? And then when things happen, we say, but God is leading me here, or this is God's purpose, and I'm a child of God. And I think it even makes me more sad when it's Christians doing it.
It's lack of responsibility.
Yes, so there's no responsibility, but we always tie it to Christianity. There's a lot of Christianese around. I'm not really expected, or I won't push myself further because, and so, just, I am eternity minded. Anyway, I'm making jokes there. But
it's called heaven bound.
Yes, it's
heavenly treasure.
And it's really coming up. I didn't think it was an issue, but it's just, and in focusing on details, us feeling uncomfortable when someone is correcting me over something. there's a lot of pride involved. There's a lot of people just not doing 100%. And this is me now calling myself and other Christians who are just like, why not giving? And God is pro excellence. Look at how we are created. I mean, 2 years, one, yeah. So
My experience with what we call, when you call your organization a Christian organization, you need to do that very carefully, because what makes it a Christian organization? Is it the people or is it the buildings?
the objective is
The
Christ.
objective, you
The
understand?
picture of Christ there.
Now, does that mean that, for example, John there, as when he runs his own business and he's a Christian, maybe his wife is a Christian, the children who work in that family business are Christian, is that not a Christian organization? I don't know. So it's very tricky. But my experience has been, we sometimes use those labels for different reasons, to give a certain picture of who we are and what it is that we stand for. And yet, ideally, what we stand for should be shown by how we live. Now, the Bible says that we are the salt of the earth. Now, what do you do when you bring a lot of salt together? You create a place called the Dead Sea. You heard of the Dead Sea?
Yeah.
It's a lot of salt. Nothing can grow there. What do you do when you take that salt and sprinkle it all over the place? It then seasons whatever it has been put on. And so as Christians, we need to be very careful that God has put us in this existence, in this world, to be the salt of the earth. And sometimes when we band together and call ourselves Christians, it is possible that we could be creating a Dead Sea as opposed to being the salt of the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, so my take, excellent, the two of you. My take on, I'm very strong on work ethic, very, very strong. And I think, even as Christians, it's our responsibility to give the very best, as if you're working for the Lord. To give 100%. Actually, excellence should be seen from you. So that, I mean, if I'm going to an event, I want it to be, everyone thought about it. I mean, I love the work that Mamlaka does. Everything needs to be thought through. I want to see the production. I want to see the people who are giving. If it's acting, I want to see them playing their parts. It doesn't. I don't have to feel like I need the need to go and to other plays or art, because I don't feel like the one I go and watch in church will give me the thing I'm looking for. Excellence is very, very key. And for me and for those who are watching, I would urge, whatever you do, do it as if. You're not doing it because you're being watched. You're not doing it because you're being supervised. Even in our workplaces, you're not doing it because you're being supervised. You're doing it because this is the best you would have given. So for me, that's very big. And I would speak to work ethic in the strong.
You see, there's a phrase I came across, and it asked, if you die today, tuseme tu leo ukazime, then yeah, it's a cool, you never know.
Sounds so fatal,
then,
I know. Use different vocabularies.
Then all the things that you wanted to do in life, they come in form of ghosts, asking you, why didn't you do this to us? Why didn't you do this to us? They would haunt you. And so, for me, by the way, I take that in all that I do. So, najiuliza, I don't want to die before I have tried this, if I have an opportunity to do it. I don't want to die before I have tried this out, because maybe this is, so I try so many things, and at the same time I try them to excellence, to avoid those ghosts coming after me and haunting me, why didn't you do this and this and this and this? And maybe you had all the opportunity in the world and time and the resources to do them. So actually, I think if we would challenge ourselves in such a manner, then we would find excellence in whatever we do. Because sometimes you just do something superficially because maybe unalipwa tu pesa kiasi. So you're like, I won't give it
just
my all.
transitioning here to my major goal. So
Yes.
hapa tu kushikilia.
Hapa
I'm
tu
just being
nimeshikilia,
real.
And maybe there's something you will do extraordinarily at that point, and someone sees you and pinpoints and says, this person,
kind of
if they
person
can
I'd
be
like to
entrusted
work
with this
with,
much
yes.
at this point, how much would they achieve if they were given this? You know, so even those humble beginnings, as she was saying, they are very, very important. That is where we start. That is where we lay our foundations.
I would like to add on what Kama has said, together with Lynn's question about identity and work ethics. These two are intertwined. And what now comes to fore is brand identity. How are you branding yourself? Back to work ethics. I am yet to find a person who branded themselves as diligent, as working hard, as respectful, as respectable, and they died poor. I'm yet to find that person. Because as time goes by, you build your identity. And now you as an individual become a brand because of what you exude. So whatever job you're given, or whatever it is, even if you sell mandazi because you never got a job, can you bake the best mandazi that there ever was? And as you bake that mandazi, can you be dependable?
Yes.
That every morning, as sure as the sun will rise, you will deliver those mandazis. And can you be accountable? That this mandazi, you're not putting choka instead of baking powder.
Yes.
Are you, and all those things. So your work ethic, your brand identity, put together, you'll amount to something. And that is, and when your career goes, we still know if you're a brother, you are the best brother that there ever was. If you're a sister, you are the best sister that there ever was. If you're a mother, you are the best mother. So that our career is now just, I'm a banker. What if I'm stripped of that banking? What remains as John Joroge? Because I am a father. Am I a good father? Am I a good husband? Am I a good son to my mother who's still alive? So there are all those brand identities that come with you, and they come also with what she talked about, work ethic. Yes.
Can I add something small? Just a sentence. Just onto what you're saying about brand. Maybe just to challenge all of us is, if you brand yourself as a Christian and you find yourself being okay with some specific things, like just mediocrity and all of those things, maybe I'll challenge us. Ask yourself, am I even a Christian in the first place?
You truly.
Am I truly branding myself the way I am? Because if I'm walking around saying I am a Christian, how comes I'm okay with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Maybe just put yourself in that point of reflection and ask yourself, but there at work, am I doing work it's as if I'm doing it for the Lord, right? And am I okay with average? If I am, maybe just ask myself in relation to God, because God is not average. He's just beyond excellence. Excellence is the only word they have. So then put to question your Christianity in the first place. Where am I at in terms of if I'm okay with this in the first place? Yeah, over.
Allow me just to something very, very
Time has really gone.
Kiasi sana. And this is a challenge to every one of us.
Yes.
And even the people listening to us and those that are at our ages. There's something that has compromised work ethic, and that is greed and instant gratification.
Yeah, true.
Like sahi, mi nasema niko na 2 years experience, nataka kukua level ya Samimate, who has 20 years, who has been aeronautical, a physicist, amekuwa sijui wapi. What is wrong with us,
Call a jack of all trades.
I think it is only important that we trust the process, that God anatupelekanga step by step, preparing us, for various levels in our lives as we grow. But I have realized that most young people, anataka tu atoke kampo, the next thing, akona all those 7 things that Mate is trying to describe to us. And it is something that, in fact, the reason why you find that people are in careers that are not fulfilling, they are depressed in one way or the other, is because they are chasing after those things, and at the same time, they want to achieve them instantly. So I would urge all of us to trust God. If our identity is in God and we know really that God is for us, let us trust the process. Let us trust the hustles. Let us trust everything that He comes our way. Tunajua, eventually, we will make it because He loves us and He has a reason why He created us, and He has the bigger picture. Yes.
I just like to read Ecclesiastes 9:10. It says, whatever your hands find, do it with all your might. So I'm just thinking, the same might that you ask your question, the questions like, is it secular, is it sacred enough, am I Christian enough? I mean, God has called you to where you are. So you need to really water the place that God has called you to at the time. Even though, like you said, if you're still transitioning, you're still taking care of your parents and your family, you're hustling. But it doesn't mean it has identified your future. So the same might we keep asking and making excuses that, what had you said about work? What about?
I am eternity minded.
Yes. Yes, so the same might you think about eternity is the same might you're supposed to use even as you're working for the Lord. So our time has really gone, and I know we'd like to say so much more. And I'll just ask and request Olive to do a parting shot. Yes, today, even as we finish.
For the wisdom.
I think, thank you everyone. To those who are listening, especially like those who are going through difficult times during COVID, and like the one who shared, we stand with you, we pray with you, and God will definitely open a way. The way we see it, God has a plan, and a plan to bless you, a plan for hope and a good future. And that will happen. That has to prevail. That is his word from Proverbs. To the points that have been made, be patient. It's not instant. I know that age group. Everything you want, it's microwave. That's the word we use for the millennials. It's microwave. It has to happen just now. They come into our office, they come into the workplaces, and they want to be CEOs immediately. Take your time. Trust the process, as he said. Be patient, but more importantly, stay true to your calling. Stay true to your work ethic, to your principles. Honor God at all times. And he does have a plan for you.
Amen.
You are important.
Amen.
And there's something for you.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you so much. I'd just like to read a few of those ones who joined us later, and just hear a few of their comments. Reverend Lovi, karibu sana, thank you for joining us. Bavin Clint Mbala, karibu sana. Then Elizabeth Wangoi says, there are places a Christian may not work. The place of faith in a believer's life has to prevail. Trust God for a place where his name will be glorified. There are places where it's ministry in the marketplace, like you have said, you don't have to really work in church to actually say that it is sacred. Some other workplaces is an outright no for a Christian. I don't know exactly what, but let us ask God where he wants us to be. Debbie Mate, the very lovely wife to Sami Mate, says, wisdom galos Sami Mate.
Wow, Debbie, wow.
She is very wise.
What a way.
Angela Wanjiko says, but of course, and she's just echoing what Debbie has said. Veronica Mboro says, man of wisdom, Sami Mate. Brand identity, yes, sir, that's from Pastor Kafi, thank you. Again, Elijah says, wisdom galore. Reverend Reverend Julie says, nice point, Lynn. As believers, we should set the standards in terms of work, ethic, and represent Christ well. Yes, Elijah Osiga says, true, Peter Kamau, microwave stardom is our issue as millennials. Ushindi Sabina says, such an amazing topic. God bless you all. Njaudara is also watching, and Waroi Liz, who's watching away from this very far country. So you want to say, yes.
Oh, wow. You had to say it. No ambiguity.
But I really want to thank you all for coming and for honoring and for gracing us with your presence. I mean, I feel like we have not covered everything, and we pray that we'll probably have a part 2 of something the same or different, depending on the need basis, and also try to lead, considering that we acknowledge that people are going through a lot of issues during the corona season. They're looking for jobs, and we want our desire to also talk about startups, even from where you're coming from. But again, thank you so much. God bless you. And yes, thank you for joining us again. We look forward to see you every once a month, hosted by iLife and Mamlaka Hill Chapel, Ruaka. God bless you and see you.